The thing I think I told you guys about is that when it comes to the actual lecture part, where we do PowerPoints, I record these bad boys. So right now we are recording everything that is said in this classroom. I just want you guys to be aware of that fact because I frequently start recording and folks start talking, and it's like, I don't know if your parents want to hear this. Your parents probably listen to these more than you guys. So I'm just throwing that out there. I have at least parents listening like, that's what you guys are learning in school. Because like we'll get off on a tangent talking about the way these schools.
I'm so smart, like she'll say a word that like, what does that mean? She's like, don't ask, stupid, you know what I mean? So like, no, I don't.
Give me the stars. Yell at them.
Speaking of like world, yeah.
Do you want your stuff swiped?
No.
No. So, besides, if you notice that Swiper doesn't actually want anything he takes. He just like throws it like halfway across the board because he's mature.
Yeah, so see, I just thought we were going to be on Doris Merritt's the whole show. Like, he just wanted
He's not even a particularly bad villain. It's just like villain, yeah. It's like you just tell him to go away 3 times. He's like, ah, you got me.
He's like, we're no swiping. I guess I'll not
Yeah,
swipe.
I guess I'll just leave now. Except for that one episode of Christmas where he's like, that doesn't work anymore. It's like, because he just decided he wasn't going to do it anymore. It's like, well, no wonder all your stuff is taken. Why don't you just hit him with a bat? That'll stop his stuff. It's like, swiper, no, you know, problem solved. The 5 themes of geography, ladies, because there's no gentleman here. Moving on. I like this map. In fact, if you couldn't tell that because it's my background, it just the lights what is this? This spooky formation. What's this showing? Yeah. Internet levels. You had it over here.
Oh, a bunch of lights.
Roy, it's the Earth at night. That's actually what was the name of this picture, the Earth at night. What I think is cool about that is you said internet levels. What makes you think that?
Because like I know in like Korea and places we don't really use internet because there's not a lot of see that many lights over there.
Well,
Or many lights in Europe and the United States.
All right. Showing electricity levels. This is one of the things it can tell us is technology levels. And I will say, not so much South Korea, North Korea absolutely, but South Korea they can. But like the other places you'll see where there's maybe less electrical development, you've got not many lights. In other places where there's a lot of folks, you see quite a bit. One thing that's kind of interesting, I think, is if you look at the United States, the East Coast, even up to about this halfway point, all those lights, start getting out west, there's not really that much going on. So there's not that many people living there. If you look at Canada, it's like big dark expanses. How much of the earth is unsettled that no one lives there? You know, because geographically it's not really practical. It's not to say people don't live all of the earth, people do, but they're just spread out, which is a concept called population density. So there's a lot we can tell from this map, but it's really not about those things. All this is a picture of the earth at night, but we can tell a lot of other things from that. So the point is there's a lot of tools that we as geographers can use in order to do this. I don't remember what that is, but I'm sure it's not that important, so we're moving on. So just to show you guys one more time, longitude and latitude. Yeah, go ahead. How this works out. And one thing that's also kind of helpful, lines of longitude are called meridians. Longitude is meridians. That's why the first meridian, the prime meridian, is where we start all these degrees of longitude, from 0 all the way to 180 degrees, and so on and so forth. Now, again, I want to point out that these lines don't really exist. Like, it's not like, you know, if you're flying in an airplane over the Atlantic Ocean, you see all these lines tattooed into the earth. You know, I'm sure that's probably pretty obvious. But despite that, they're still useful for telling where things are. Many moons ago, as part of the geography curriculum, I had students make their own maps using poster boards. They had big yardsticks, and they drew it, the entire world, using the lines of longitude and latitude. And to be perfectly honest, while it's very labor intensive, I've never had students that have been so able to know where things are in the world. They have such good spatial recognition. So it is useful even to this day. However, there are some limitations. Wrong direction. So again, this was kind of what we talked about yesterday. Location is where something is. And again, if we look at the Earth, does this map look weird to you all? Yes, no, maybe so. The thing that's interesting about the Earth is that it's a 3D object. Yeah, when you try to put it on a 2D platform, say a map, you're going to run into some trouble called distortion. There's actually kind of a silly picture in your textbook of the dude's head. It's like a picture of him, and they basically try to make it flat, looking like you would a map, and like his hair is like because of the way that it's rendered. So it's never actually 100% accurate. There's always going to be problems with your maps. But despite this, maps still have their usage. There's actually all kinds of different kinds of maps, from not navigational to topographic. Although when we talk about navigation, this is something that is maybe something some folks are used to. Something that gives directions. That's a directional map. But starting with the new stuff today, place is the second thing of geography, and it can be best summarized by describing it somewhere. Okay? We're going to talk about what it's like where you are. I would say, would it help if I turn the light back on, or is this better? Okay, let me open up a couple of window blinds so we have a little bit of light, and make it a little easier for those of you who need a little bit more light. But yeah, I'm liking. There we go. That's good, right? That'll be big. So the thing with describing somewhere, how would you describe Louisville, Kentucky? It's in the United States. I said describe it. Okay. So let's not try to tell us where it is. Like, you know, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. What is it like?
Isn't it like?
Hang on. Let's do hands thing because that's too much. Yeah.
It's where they have
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, please. It's urban. Urban versus city. Rural is country.
Yeah.
When you get out of the city, sure. Yeah, Ohio River Valley. What's the weather like? Yeah. So you just described 4 seasons, okay? That's a valid point. Because if I go to say the tropics, we only have 2, wet and dry. So that is a valid description if you're describing weather patterns and things like that, yeah. This is what place is all about. But also, as you guys point out with some of the suburban, it also has to do with human interactivity. We can change place by how we deal with a situation. Now I'm going to ask you guys some questions. I want to see if you guys can answer this. Do you guys ever play the game GeoTracker?
No.
I think it's the name of the game. Basically, it gives you a random picture around the world and says, where is this? And you get points based on how wrong you are. Because anyone who's played knows you don't get the answers right. It's just how wrong are you. So we're going to do some kind of some of this. Any idea where this might be? Colorado. I'll give you a hint. It's not necessarily in the U.S. This picture could be anywhere in the world.
Oh, Australia.
Australia. Fair enough. What makes you guys think Australia, Mexico? What are you guys saying that? Yeah. Yeah. Australia. You guys know that Of course, Australia is the most arid continent in the world. It's mostly desert. And this is actually a desert. Like we think of like the Sahara, where it's like all sand. That's not all deserts. That's actually only the Sahara. Most of them are kind of rocky or dirt. Yeah.
Also, well, deserts can also be,
True. This is also true. This specifically is from the Atacama Desert, which is in South America, around the area of Chile. What about here? Looks like you're a lake. You own a lake?
Well, if I'm on the lake house, but I don't know it, my friends.
I think it's like one of the things I always laugh when people like hearing someone's like, I'm going to the lake as if there is one. You know? I was like, which lake is the lake? I don't know, just always made me laugh. Anyway, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, yes, please.
I think it's like, where, down in the world.
No.
Yeah.
Alaska. This is Alaska.
No.
I'm not lying to you. This is. I've actually been here before. This is along the Tracy Arm Fjord, and I did not take this picture. No, I just grabbed from Wikipedia. But I do have photos of the time we had. We still had some glacial movement going on. So ours is a little bit snowier than this. But the thing is that again, one of the things I'm trying to show you here is that depending on the time of the season, place can also change. The places are constantly changing thing to some extent. Which brings me to my next photo and final photo of this little game. Any idea where this is? Yeah, not the photo. Although to be fair, Florida did have some snowfall. It is Kentucky, you're right. This is on I-65.
Yeah, I know, it looks familiar.
You guys got me on that one. Alright, so let's talk region. Region is one of my favorite things to look at. Because that dude's culture. One thing that's kind of funny is we tend to oversimplify this. As we often talk about in social studies, there's a lot of information out there about different peoples around the world, and we're not very good at recognizing cultural differences. I mean, think about it. We refer to people by continents when we talk about race. Well, that person, they're Asian. Well, let's just analyze that statement for just a second. Asia is the largest continent on the planet. Okay? So when you say someone is Asian, do you mean they're Russian? Do you mean that they are Iranian? How about Indian? And usually when we're talking about Asian, we're talking about someone from Eastern Asia. You know, don't even get started about like determining whether someone is Cambodian or Japanese or Korean. You know. And by the way, adding a monkey wrench to this whole type of thing is there are many places in the world that have a tribalized identity. It's basically nations within nations within nations. So we're not very good at it, so we generalize, yes? This is where region comes in. Region looks at cultural similarities. You'll never have a prayer of knowing every culture on this planet. No one can. But you can have an understanding of where basic cultural similarities come from. For instance, let's talk about English for a second. The language we speak. Okay? You guys know what I mean when I say a root language? Okay, you said yes. What's a root language? The language that you know? Well, not exactly. A root language has to do with languages, essentially. It's a parent language, if you will. Think about this. Every language, for the most part, is based on another language. The structure, the wordage, things like that. It's just an evolved form of a dialect. A dialect is a regional variant of a language. So, for instance, Spanish is based off of Latin. No,
What?
English is not based on Latin. I'll give you an example. Portuguese, which is another Romance language, a language based on Latin, has a word, caldo. Okay? Caldo, which means hot. Okay? Sort of like caliente is on Spanish. Okay? The closest word to that in German is kalt, which means cold, which is the closer word to English. Caldo, which means hot, or kalt, which means cold. It's kalt, yes? In fact, if you were to go to a German restaurant and only spoke English and they only spoke German, and you wanted a glass of cold water, they could figure it out. Because cold water in German is kalt Wasser. You know a Germanic language, yes. However, English is weird because it does have a lot of other languages thrown into it. For instance, the concept of laissez-faire economics, which is a French term. You've got a lot of French words in English, and then you also have a lot of Latin. It's not based on Latin, but we threw Latin words in to make us sound more intelligent, is the long and short of it. Add in this funky wrench accent. You guys know the British accent, yes?
Yes.
You guys know that's not actually what an English accent is, right? See, what happened is, for much of English history, much of England's history, people spoke in accents like we are speaking now.
So they wanted to change
Because after the American Revolution, it was like a really bad divorce. We hated England so bad, and they hated us so bad, that we intentionally changed aspects of our culture so that to this day, we don't do certain things that England does and vice versa. For instance, we drink coffee for the most part. They drink tea, yes. We specifically stopped drinking it. Yeah, on the adult beverage side of things, they were drinking rum in England. We started drinking bourbon and whiskey. Now, going to England's side of things, there's actually a reason for that. I'll get to that later. On England's side of things, they didn't want to sound like a bunch of basically redneck, backwater, hillbilly rebels. So that's how they saw the Americans. They basically saw us like, we were in the Union, right? So they started speaking with a higher class accent. They started changing vowel structure to sound more refined, essentially, which is where you get the British accents today, which, by the way, there's more than 20 British accents out there. If you ever watch British TV, you start to notice them pretty quick, actually. Anyhow, and what's weird about accent is the vast majority of it is vowel structure. Like how you pronounce vowels is where you get accents. Right, so if you're trying to sound Irish, you change the way you speak accents. Yeah, or vowels.
Well, you say European and that British accent sounds like
Yeah, my favorite is, the actor Michael Caine, who played the Alfred in the Batman movies, and he was in Miss Congeniality as the guy who helped out Sandra Bullock's character. If you say my cocaine, like the drug, my cocaine, that's exactly how he says his name with his accent. It's all about vowel structure. Anyways, not to mention things like regional slang words. Slang just throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing as well, because words start taking on other meanings. I mean, the obvious one in America is that's cool, which means good, but cool is a word that means like physically cold. So, that sort of thing. and it's different even in English-speaking countries. Probably the most blatantly obvious of this to me, anyways, is in America versus England. If you go to England and say, I want you to knock me up in the morning, what you're saying to somebody is, I want you to wake me up at this time.
What?
Yes, that's the expression. Yeah, no, knock me up means like, literally, it's like, time to wake up. That's a direct meaning, you know? Whereas in here, being knocked up is something totally different. Anyways, this is just some slang terms. Easy killer. So regions are ways we look at the world based upon cultural similarities. The Middle East would be an example of a region. If you think about it, the Middle East is kind of a weird place because most of us, if I were to say where is the Middle East, and I said point to it on the world map for me, you're probably going to say, oh, it's like Saudi Arabia, like right along in here, and you'd be right, but you'd also be wrong because it stretches basically all the way from this side of India all the way across northern Africa. Most of northern Africa culturally is Arab because back in the 600s AD, the Prophet Muhammad and his followers spread the religion out west across all of Africa. And culturally speaking, places like Morocco are very Arab. The main language there is Arabic. The main religion is Islam. It's a Bedouin culture. If you think about carpets and things like that. You guys know why carpets are associated with the Middle East?
No.
Basically, the reason comes down to where they're living. We'll get to Al-Amin another time. We'll talk about that. But no, the carpets are there because much of the Middle East is arid. It's a desert climate. And like I said, you can live there, but you can't be really concentrated. There's not enough natural resources, so people spread out. And in order to not tax the environment too much, they move from place to place in a nomadic society. So imagine living your entire life where you have to be able to pick up every belonging you own, strap it to a camel, and walk. Or you have to pack less stuff, right? But the thing of it is, it doesn't mean that people are living really terrible, crude lives. They found ways to make life comfortable. And one of the things you really quickly start to understand, laying down on the beach gets a little uncomfortable after a day. Imagine sitting on the sand every day. Imagine the chafing. The sand gets places you don't want sand to be. So how do you prevent that? You set down a floor in your tent of carpets. Furthermore, one of the genius things about living a nomadic lifestyle is you think about it, the desert has all kinds of plants, right? They're just really specific, hardy plants that can grow up inside a plant. The problem is we can't eat those plants. Really tough grasses, things like that, you can't eat them and digest them. But what you can do is you can get an animal to eat and digest those, and then you eat the animal. So what you do is you herd animals, and they eat these plants, they convert it to an energy source that you can consume. Now, would you want to leave on only meat? Of course not. That would probably, you want to make, really sick in the downstairs area. But you want to have a very nice life that way. So what happens is these herdsmen would take these animals and trade them with farmers for the food that they need and basically keep moving them out. So they developed this almost, what's the word I'm looking for here? Mutually beneficial organization. You see, symbiotic relationship is what I'm trying to say. Anyways, this is a map of, again, the Middle East, including parts of Africa, what have you. All right, so the next theme of geography is human-environment interaction. This is best summarized as people's relationship with the Earth. Now, there's a couple ways that we can look at this. For one thing, we are constantly having our lives determined by our environments. Some as simple as what clothing you wear, but a little bit more complicated than that, what type of foods you eat. One thing that we have that's really amazing is the technology to transport food all around the world. Hypothetically, you could buy food from just about any place in the world right now. That being said, we don't generally. Most of the food we buy is regional to some extent. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of food that gets transported all across the world, no problem. But there's also a lot of things that are being determined by the environment, I would say. Not just distance, but also what is seasonally available. Now, again, technology can change that, but makes it more expensive. I'm going down a whole wiggly worm can that we don't really need to get into. But suffice it to say, what we eat is also determined by the physical environment. Where we build our cities and homes, how we build them, what we build them out of, all these different things help or are determined by, I should say, the earth and its environment. And we have a constant relationship with that earth. We also affect it right back. Can anyone think of a way that we influence the earth? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Global warming would be an example. Pollution's another example. Neat kind of picture here. You guys see what that is in the background? It's the Taj Mahal. Yeah, it's in India. And of course, we're talking about, where you build your houses and things like that. And then also regional cuisine. This is a cool house right here. I was talking about living a nomadic lifestyle. This is a Mongolian bear, or a yurt, which is basically a tent dwelling. What's kind of neat is that it looks like this on the outside, right? But that's what it looks like on the inside. Right? Well, then look at this. They've got a television and a refrigerator. They've got an internet-based computer. I mean, that's like a modern house. It just moves, right? When I say nomadic, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're, living literally like they were 1,000 years ago. That they've adapted, they've changed, but they still live an old lifestyle. If that makes any sense. There's actually a really neat episode of this TV show called Going Tribal with Bruce Perry, where he was in Mongolia and he was with his family, and the family had a child with I forget which mental and physical disabilities, but basically she was wheelchair bound and basically couldn't really do much to fend for herself. And yet they were living this lifestyle on horseback, herding animals, going from place to place. It was a really traditional lifestyle. Yet it was modern at the same time. Both of them met in high school. It's kind of brilliant to see how this works out. And we'll finish up movement tomorrow. Guys, have a good one. I will show